Hey everyone, Gill Gross here post-match. Carlos Alcaraz versus Frances Tiafoe, US Open 2022 semifinals. If you're not here for spoilers, click off the video in 3, 2, 1. Carlos Alcaraz to his first major final 5-set victory over Frances Tiafoe deep into the night in New York in front of an extremely passionate crowd who was treated to a tremendous match between two of, I think, top 10 entertainers easily in men's tennis. Let me just kind of get it in a word on Tiafoe first before I get into this match. Culmination of amazing work that he's put in this week. The best tennis of his life. Slowly kind of the pieces have come together. I think the biggest differences have been, one, his focus, which he's worked very hard on. It hasn't just come naturally to him. That's the first thing that I think Wayne Ferreira, his coach, really locked in on, taking away his cell phone for treatment post-match, making him go on mile-long runs without any music. They have really worked on the focus, and it's worked. The fitness, the diet. He's just in better shape now. He used to get tired much quicker than he does now. The forehand technique, it is much more sound than it used to be, and he now has a more consistent forehand, and he's much better on the return of serve, especially on the forehand side. And also the first serve. I think he's just changed his approach. He is going bigger now, and he is using it as a weapon where he used to kind of just slide it in and be content to, not really be a huge server. And now he is stepping to the line and really throwing his arm at the ball with bad intentions. And he's had an incredible run. But it is ended by Carlos Alcaraz. So let's start with the endurance on the Alcaraz side of things, because it'd be crazy to not lead with that, right? Most players wouldn't have been able to get up for this match. Most players wouldn't have had any legs in this match. And even if Tiafoe won the match, I would have, and if you followed me on Twitter, I tweeted after the first set that Alcaraz looks pretty much fine physically. That, maybe he was a little stiff at the very start of the match, but I think that might be normal for him anyway, to not have his muscles, fully warm right away. But all in all, the movement was spectacular. He was explosive the entire time. So if Francis would have won this match, he would have deserved 100% of the credit for beating a physically capable Carlos Alcaraz. Unfortunately, had Tiafoe won, many would have falsely attributed it to Alcaraz's fatigue, because they went into the match with that preconceived notion, which I never really think is fair. I always make it a point. You evaluate what you're seeing in the match. Do not just say a player is fatigued because they played a bunch of five-setters before. Trust your eyes. Figure out what we're seeing out there. And what we saw was vintage court coverage, explosiveness from Alcaraz. I think the same level of patience and discipline in his shot selection that he usually displays, which isn't always great, but I thought it was, average for him in this match. So somehow, some way, after finishing past 2 a.m. against Cilic 5 sets, 2 a.m. against Sinner 5 sets, and that was a very intense 5 sets, which was a match that went past the 5-hour mark. So it wasn't just past 2 a.m., not just 5 sets, but a long one. Somehow, he was ready to go here physically. He is now 8-1 for his career in 5-setters. This, to me, showed that he's pretty much indestructible. If this couldn't break him physically, what's going to break him physically? Anything? What can be harder than that? I guess now we need to see how he looks in the final because he's played yet another 5-setter. So the narrative will not really end here. But he's got bionic legs is kind of what I'm getting at here. And before I move on from this topic, I just need to say, and please, please, I hope I'm heard on this. Do not attribute this to the fact that he is 19 years old. It makes no sense why people say that. I don't get it. I see it all the time. The idea that Alcaraz can go forever, that he can go longer because, he's a teenager, he's 19. What is that? I don't understand that. 19-year-olds, on average, are not fully developed physically, and they do not have the level of endurance that they will develop if they continue to work on themselves when they are at a more advanced age, like, 21, 22, 23. That's kind of when players like to usually form into their bodies. Look at Frances Tiafoe. He would have cramped at 19 years old in this match. I think he'd be the first to admit that. I think his coaches would tell you that. He would have cramped. So it's not because he's 19. 19-year-olds can't do that. It's because he's Carlos Alcaraz. It's because he's a very, very, very abnormal athlete at 19. Abnormal. So let's get that out of the way. Don't attribute it to his age. Attribute it to a very, very rare level of fitness that comes from genetic lottery and hard work. All right. Tactically in this one, I kind of want to address the part of the match where Alcaraz dominated first. Now, Tiafoe won 2 tiebreak sets in this match, the first set and the fourth set. He is now a remarkable 8-0 in, or he is. I should use the past tense. He's 8-0 in tiebreaks at the U.S. Open. He won every single tiebreak he played, which I think might be make up for half the sets that he won. So incredible. But, he won a couple of tight sets. But I do want to address the part of the match that was probably most influential in the outcome, which was the second set and the third set and the long period of time when Alcaraz was dominating. And I think that there were a couple factors that ended up demoralizing Frances. First of all, the cat and mouse exchanges. And don't get me wrong, this was a factor in the fifth and even the sets that Frances won, right? But I want to address it in the context of Tiafoe getting really discouraged at one point in this match. So first, the cat and mouse exchanges. Look, Tiafoe, he's got some baseline power, right? But it's not enormous baseline power. It's more that he takes time away, he steps inside the court, and he can redirect. But ultimately he comes forward to finish. That's how Frances plays. And what ended up happening is he kept losing cat and mouse exchanges. Tiafoe kept losing these exchanges that include drop shots and lobs and extended net play. And when I say cat and mouse exchanges, I'm usually referring to instances in which both players wind up in the forecourt at the same time, which again usually comes from you come to net, you hit a drop volley, the other player comes to net, they have to slice, right, and so on. Alcaraz's quickness and hand skills, his fantastic lobs, his really great short angles, his dipping passing shots, his strength on conventional passing shots, and his speed, mostly his quickness. That's the biggest disruptor in this whole equation. Created this environment where Frances was struggling to finish with his volleys, struggling to finish in general. He ended up getting lobbed a lot, getting passed a lot. Then he started feeling the pressure of that speed, and he started missing some volleys that he always makes. So Tiafoe ended up 29 for 55 at net. That's what is that? 53%. 53%, one of the best volleyers in the world. 53% at net. Because, again, Alcaraz, kind of unbeatable in those cat and mouse exchanges. So difficult to get the ball to bounce twice in front of Carlos Alcaraz with a drop volley, with a mid-court drop shot. And credit to Alcaraz, he wasn't missing a lot of passing shots because he was actually trusting his legs, which I think is maturity from Alcaraz. He was hitting a safe passing shot, giving Tiafoe a decently difficult volley, but not trying to finish with that passing shot, and saying, Frances, you better hit the most remarkable drop volley of your life because I'm coming with my speed. And time again, Frances just couldn't finish. So that was a big problem, but especially because that is something that Tiafoe is incredible at. You know, Tiafoe has I think some of the best hands in the world. And again, some of the best volleys in the world. So when that's not working, that is not only does that play a part in, losing points, but it also plays a part mentally because something that always works isn't working. Now I want to talk about the crowd, which is very, very important to Frances Tiafoe. I've never seen a player feel such a connection with the crowd, interact with the crowd so much. And by the way, vice versa. I think the crowd feels a connection to him. It's there's a real relationship there. And I think that comes across. I hope that doesn't sound like gobbledygook, but I think it's true. And I think Frances probably came into this match, especially coming off the Andrei Rublev quarterfinal, which was a complete home team, away team environment. Completely. I was at that match. And Rublev, even down 2-0, wasn't getting anything. Zero support. The crowd wanted blood in favor of Frances Tiafoe, right? So I think Frances comes into the semifinal. He is the first male player to make the semifinal at the U.S. Open American since Andy Roddick in 2006. And I think that Frances probably expected to come into this and have that same home crowd. And he just didn't. He didn't at all. It was, I've seen different accounts. I saw, one person on Twitter say it was 60-40 Alcaraz, one person saying it was 70-30 Tiafoe. Regardless, it wasn't a very partisan crowd. Like, this was a crowd where both players were able to really bring the decibel levels up with success. And why do I think that is? Alcaraz's popularity. I think, there's just something going on there. It's almost at a... look, we're early days, so this feels crazy to say, but I just think we could get to a point with Alcaraz, and maybe we're there, where it's going to be kind of like Roger Federer, where wherever he goes, the crowd just kind of loves him. Because, I noticed even at the Play for Peace exhibition for Ukraine before the event, Carlos played his doubles match with Taylor Fritz, Tiafoe, and Tommy Paul. And when they got announced, and they all got announced to the court one by one, Alcaraz got the biggest pop. So they just love him. They love him in New York. And he had a lot of support. Part of it is New York. The New York crowd, New York is one of the most diverse places in the world. And it's not, Americans just don't always get the full breadth of support against certain players because New York is so international. But I also just think it's Alcaraz's popularity. So I do think that Tiafoe was affected by this because the way he went away in the second set and the third set, I had not seen that all tournament long from him. A dip in intensity, a dip in focus, a lot of easy, unforced errors off the ground, completely losing the consistency of his ground strokes. Mentally, he just went away for a little bit there. And when you go away, even for a little bit, it was a lot of bit on the scoreboard. It was two sets. So between Tiafoe losing a lot of, highlight reel points from winning positions in cat and mouse exchanges that he's used to winning and the crowd going against him, I think he got a little bit demoralized for a while. But he turned it around. His back was against the wall in the fourth set. I think those who were supporting Frances got more into it, more vocal, because it started to get desperate. And then Tiafoe was heroic in his comeback, saving a match point in that fourth set and, wearing his heart on his sleeve as he always does. And then suddenly I thought that both players started to, have a great environment in favor of them, and the energy rose, and Tiafoe was back to being locked in. But I thought the crowd played a factor. I do want to skip to the fifth set here because obviously, ultimately, it decides the match. Alcaraz made a key adjustment in the fifth set, which was really a good one, especially in the context of the first set. I'll just say, I thought Alcaraz lost the first set in large part because he missed too many returns, especially second serve returns, but in general, even when Tiafoe made first serves, Frances just wasn't made to play enough by Alcaraz. There were a lot of, there were some 2 double faults in that tiebreak and missed returns. So I felt even in the first set, Alcaraz, once they got into it, once they got extended past a couple shots, Carlitos was playing better, winning the majority of points. But in that tiebreak and for much of the set, they weren't even playing past 1 shot because double faults and missed returns. The double faults really only in the tiebreak, only 3 total. So just to be clear, but missed returns throughout the entire set. So what was that adjustment in the fifth set? It was actually a question in my live chat yesterday. Someone asked me if Alcaraz should do this. He moved back on the second serve return. Generally, what Alcaraz likes to do is step inside the baseline, take that second serve return really early, and play it really fast and aggressive. And if he hits it right, the server has barely any time to react, and it's super aggressive and very damaging. But he misses a lot of second serve returns, which I've covered a lot with him, and I don't really like it, honestly. I think he's too good in baseline rallies to go with that strategy. I think it's a much better strategy for a player like Tiafoe, who also hits second serve returns in that same vein, in that same manner. But for him, it makes a lot more sense. And quite frankly, he's better at it. Tiafoe's backhand return is more compact and better on the rise than Alcaraz's is. So it makes more sense, and he's better at it. Anyway, Alcaraz moved back and played some heavy forehands. And when he moved back, he did it. I made a note of it. He did it at 2-all. He got 2 forced errors off of his heavy forehand returns, giving himself more time to load it up, and then just putting really heavy cross-court forehands in play. Both of them on the deuce side? Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, both of them were on the deuce side going cross-court. So Tiafoe hits the second serve, T, but Alcaraz is moving back. So instead of a backhand return taken early, it's a forehand return taken from deep. And Alcaraz just whips it really heavy, breaking that sideline on the deuce side. And he forces an error off of it twice. And then at love 40, double fault. So you give Tiafoe a different look. You change his sight line. You apply a different kind of pressure, and you get the double fault. That's the break of serve that Alcaraz rode en route to winning the fifth set. So that's very key and smart from Alcaraz, and he should be applauded for that. Let's talk about the serving in a little bit more in general. Very different serve strategies here. Alcaraz was very smart, in my opinion, to serve a little bit safer in terms of his spot serving and to avoid having to hit second serves. So Alcaraz served 70% serves in play. And I think that's very important against Tiafoe because he's so dangerous on the second serve return. I can't recall ever seeing a player in recent times approaching off of the return as much as we've seen Tiafoe do it in this tournament. And he kept doing that against Alcaraz. Honestly, Alcaraz had an answer oftentimes. But in general, you just don't want to deal with that against Tiafoe. He puts so much pressure on you. He's so good at returning the kick serve. And even though Alcaraz ended up winning a good percentage of second serve points, very good actually, 60%, I still think it served him really, really well to not be in that position. Because I think when the chips are down especially and Frances really locks in, that's when he levels up on that second serve return. And it's so good, you just don't want to deal with it. So Alcaraz, by making his first serve, you keep Tiafoe back, you push him behind the baseline, and you start those, you start to make him defend from the back of the court. And that's so important because Tiafoe was simply outmatched here when he wasn't able to play up on the baseline. And he can't really hurt Carlos when he's pushed behind the baseline because his forehand isn't big enough. His backhand isn't big enough. So Alcaraz's first serve percentage was key. Now, Tiafoe, on the other side, was really bad in first serves in percentage, 47%. Let's talk about that. This was not new for the tournament. This is how Tiafoe has been serving. So it's difficult to be very, very critical of it because look, Tiafoe has a pretty good second serve, a pretty good kick serve, which is something he's improved. And again, as I talked about at the very beginning of this video, he started to use his first serve as a weapon. And as a result, he's been around 50% in a lot of these matches. But he's found those clutch, he's especially been clutch with his serve, which has helped him. And I think, going big on the serve has helped him under pressure. So, helped him land those first serves when the chips are down because he had been doing it, he had been going big and flat kind of all match long. I think it just helped him continue to go for it under pressure. Anyway, it's tough because here he missed a bunch of first serves, but I don't know if I can really get on him for sticking with what worked. And what's worked through this entire tournament is going for risky, big, flat first serves that, they're not going to be very high percentage. And that's what he did. I don't know, maybe he should have at some point changed it up, but it's not like, I don't know, like here, let's do an exercise here. And I'm ending on this, and I don't know what the result is going to be. So let's do an exercise here. Let's see if Tiafoe's first serve percentage was better in the sets he won. I'm doing this live. I don't know what the result of this is going to be. So he won the first set, and his first serve percentage was 40%. Okay. Lost the second set, and he made 69% of first serves. Lost the third set. Oh, yikes. He made 30% of first serves. Okay. Set 4, he won. And he made 57%. Set 5, he lost, and he made 33%. Okay, so a loose correlation, potentially. But were his percentages good in the sets that he won? Set 1, no, 40%. Set 4, 57%. I guess good comparatively, but not good in general. Set 2 was the only set that he made a lot of first serves in, and he lost. So I'm not convinced that that was a big deal for Tiafoe and a huge reason he lost, which is kind of why I'm ending the video on it, because I didn't think it was a big key. Look, obviously it would have helped him to make more of his big flat first serves, but there is a trade-off to strategies. And at the end of the day, Tiafoe had to play big offensive tennis. He had to. He was losing from neutral. He got smoked in the long rallies. 9+ rallies at the start of the fourth set were 17-3 Alcaraz. IBM doesn't supply me rally length stats, so I don't know what it was for the match, or I would tell you, but I can tell, but it was on the broadcast. So Tiafoe had to play big first strike tennis, and there's a trade-off to that. So, okay, he served a low percentage. That's how this works sometimes. There is a trade-off to every strategy. So I just would like to put that out there and keep that in mind. So incredible win for Frances Tiafoe. I'll have a preview of the final coming up tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.